Hey everybody, this is Austin with Windy Ridge Trapper. We're going to go over a little bit of a late season fur market recap, the little bit that we know. It's not going to be a super long video. Not a lot has changed, just a couple of key items that we need to go over. And at the end of the video, I'm going to give you a couple ideas on how you can make some extra money and how you could potentially make more money on your fur. So the first thing we're going to go over is beaver. It's kind of been the hot item over the past couple of years, especially compared to average. Over the past couple of years, we've seen averages in the high 20s, even down into the low and mid 30s, which is pretty good. That's a lot better than what we've seen for the majority of my life, but don't expect to see those this season or potentially even for the next 1 or 2 seasons from what we've gathered. Right now, beaver averages from what I've seen have been in the lower 20s. I even honestly expect to see those go down into the mid to mid upper teens. It wouldn't shock me at all if we saw those go down to $16 to $18 averages, but right now from what we're seeing, they're between $20 and $24. Otters are about the same, still consistent. We're seeing averages in the 20s, the $27 to $30 range. You're not going to get much better than that unless it's a really super nice quality hide. Minks, we're still seeing $7 averages, just kind of what we've seen over the past couple of years. And muskrats kind of vary a lot on region to region, auction to auction we're seeing right now. I've seen some auctions sell them at averages as low as $1.50, and I've seen some sell them at averages as high as $4 a piece. So you just got to kind of watch where you're selling those at right now, but that's realistically kind of what we've seen for the past couple of years. A lot of people are talking about coon prices going way up. I would really like to say that they will, but I don't have a lot of hope for that. With the war in Ukraine still going on, I don't think that we're going to see that budge too much anytime soon. But the averages that we're seeing right now are still in that $3 to $4 range for decent coons, and that is definitely not adding in trash, like stuff that's freezer burned, it's in the grease. Really small hides or heavy damaged hides, you're going to look at $3 to $5 averages for decent coon hides. Coyotes are still in the gutter. They haven't came back much, and I don't see those coming back much for the foreseeable future, of course, unless you have some off-collared hides. Bobcats, they seem like they've kind of taken a little bit of a dip from last year. We were very fortunate last year in my area, where we even got some $70 hides, $75 hides. And by the way, we're speaking on eastern fur. If these prices sound low to you. But bobcats this year, like I said, we're looking at $50 to $60 averages. I don't think that we're going to see very many of those $70, $75, $80 hides on the upper end. Red fox is still very poor, very, very rough shape. Right now in all the auctions and people that we're following, we're seeing $9 averages. I don't see that market coming back heavy anytime soon, not unless something major happens or something changes. Gray fox is doing kind of what I thought that it would do, is just taking a little bit longer than normal. Those averages are slowly starting to go up. We're seeing those rising up to the $15 and $17 averages. They are outpacing red fox, and the reason for that is just because there are not as many of them with the diseases that they're getting. The populations are way down, the harvest is way down, so therefore the price is going up on those, and I do expect to see those prices to continue over into the foreseeable future. But obviously $15 to $17 really isn't, in my opinion, where gray foxes need to be. They need to be much higher than that. Castor prices are low, and expect castor prices to continue to drop over the next year. Right now we're seeing $20 to $30 averages per pound on castor, maybe $40 a pound on the super full, heavy, nice #1 grade casters. The one thing I will say about beaver castor, they kind of go the opposite direction of the beaver fur and felt market. So if we see those beaver prices continue to drop back to regular levels, expect to see those castor prices going back up into the 50s and 60s and maybe $70 ranges on average. But we'll know more about that this time next year. Fisher is still average, about the same as what it has been. We're seeing averages on Fisher from $40 to $50. Skunks are still going on pretty strong, seeing averages on those $12 to $16 a piece. And one thing that kind of surprised me is that the possum averages actually went up a little bit. It was kind of funny. From what we've gathered, possum averages are going for a whopping 80 cents to $1.30 a piece, which is a little bit higher than what it was last year. You can always count on that possum to make a dollar. But like I said, overall fur prices are pretty much the same as what they have been. Not too much is changing besides the beavers and bobcats dropping a little bit and gray fox coming up. Just a couple things that of note, ways that you can make more money on your fur and ways you can make some extra money. So from everyone that I've talked to and all of the data that I've collected, and this isn't anything groundbreaking. You probably could have thought of it yourself if you would have stopped and thought about it for a couple hours. But if you want to make top dollar on your fur, the best thing that you can do is to find someone who is directly going to use it. So I'm talking about taxidermists, I'm talking about tanneries, people who own and run their own tanneries, and smaller operations or even mid-size operations. If they're not buying in too large of quantities. So something like that, something that we've noticed over the past couple of years, and this is not always true, I want to emphasize that. Sometimes you will make a lot more money at the big auction houses and the big fur dealers than you will with the smaller dealers. It just kind of depends what the market looks like year to year and what the demands are. But a lot of times you will make more money selling directly to local suppliers than you will to the auction houses. Now, letting this be said, I'm talking about direct to manufacturer is what I'm talking about. So somebody who is going to take that item and make it into something. Sometimes you will find a dealer that will pay more than an auction house, but just to be totally honest, me being a dealer myself, that's not always going to happen. There will be years that you'll make more with a dealer than the auction house, but that's usually not a super great thing because that normally means that the dealer got hosed, is what that means. But that is the way the buying fur works. It's you're just as good to go to the casino and put all your money on black or red. You don't really ever know exactly what's going to happen. But if you want to make the most money on your fur, it's best to do research. Whenever you send your fur off to an auction house, you're basically just hoping that you get a good return on your investment, which, like I said, I'm not hating on that. We send tons of fur to Canada, and we send lots of fur to our local auction houses as well. So if you want to do that, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, and sometimes you will make the most amount of money on that item. But if you want to guarantee a decent return on your hide, the best thing you can do is pick up that phone and make some phone calls. The way that I look at it, whenever you sell fur to and whenever you take your fur to an auction house, there is absolutely no guarantee on what you're going to get back on that hide. Most state, and I mean it varies from state to state, whether you consign your fur in a lot or whether you consign it, they sell it individually. Every state's different, but there is no guarantee on what you're going to get on your fur. Like whenever we send fur up to fur harvesters, and I'm not hating on fur harvesters, we've been sending our fur to them, and we had been sending it to NAFA for many years before they had closed their doors. And there were years that we made lots and lots of money up there. But you're not even guaranteed to sell your fur. I have coyotes and coons and some bobcats that have been sitting up there in Canada for years and years, and they've still not sold them. And if you send them stuff that isn't in the best of shape, they may just throw it in the trash. That's just is the way that they do business. And if you send your stuff to a local auction house, it's not going to get thrown into the trash, but sometimes it may sell for a lot less than what you feel like your fur is worth. The benefit to selling directly to a local consumer or to a manufacturer is you know what you're going to get paid before you walk out that door. And if you don't like the price, you can just say, hey, I really don't like your price and I'd like to try my luck elsewhere. And that's totally fine. You can pick your fur right up, no harm, no foul, go somewhere else. So that's just something to keep in mind. Another avenue to make some more money that a lot of people do not cash in on is the remnants of what you have left over after you've put up your fur. So a lot of carcasses, glands, skulls, tails, such that items like that are worth money, and in some cases they're worth almost as much as the hide is, especially if the hide isn't a super high quality hide. So almost every skull has some sort of a market value, some obviously worth way more than others. As an example, most coon skulls, you're going to get anywhere from 10 to 75 cents a piece on them, just depending on what your local dealer is willing to pay for them. Those obviously aren't worth as much just because it's not nearly as hard to find a whole pile of coon skulls as it is other skulls. Another example would be coyotes or bobcats, fox, predator skulls. Those typically bring a higher market value. You could be looking anywhere from a couple of dollars all the way up to $10 to $15. It just depends on where you're at in the country, what your local guy's willing to pay. And that's normally something that you're just going to throw in the trash. So instead of throwing that in the trash, throw it in your freezer with the rest of your fur and then make some extra money. On the carcasses, depending on who you sell it to, every dealer has a different way that they prefer those prepared, and different carcasses have different sale values in different parts of the country. For example, I know down south, Louisiana, some parts of Alabama, I know that they buy coon carcasses because people down there actually consume them, they eat them. I'm not super familiar with it just because we've had talks with people down there about doing that. We've never actually went through with it just because of the liability of it, and just because of how difficult it would be to store the amount of coons that they want, hundreds of coons that they want, and make it to where we feel like it's sanitary enough for human consumption. But there are places that buy them to eat them. Up here on the farther northeast coast, that's not really a thing that happens very often, but there are people like us, for example, that buy them. They're lure makers, manufacturers, and we can use the meat and the glands from those carcasses to make bait and lure. Every carcass has a different value. Some have no value, some have a little bit. The carcass typically doesn't have as much value as the skull, but on some animals they do. For example, we pay almost as much for a muskrat carcass as we do for the hide. Bobcat carcasses are not quite worth as much as a bobcat skull, in most cases anyway, but we do typically pay pretty good money for a bobcat carcass. I can't remember off of the top of my head exactly what we're paying right now. It changes from year to year, but if I had to guess, we're paying on average from $4 to $8 a piece on bobcat carcasses. Beaver carcasses are worth a little bit of money. Like I said, not worth as much as bobcats or muskrat just because they're easier to come by, but they're usually worth a couple bucks a piece. And some dealers, unlike us, they prefer for you to actually just sell them the glands straight. Once again, that's a dealer-to-dealer thing. We prefer the entire carcass. But if you become proficient in removing glands, especially canine glands, bobcat glands, red fox glands, mink glands, musk glands, and beaver castor, those are all things that a lot of dealers are willing to buy, and some glands do fetch a pretty heavy price, especially the rarer glands like the musk glands out of the muskrat. And then a final thing, still on like the carcass talk, the beaver tails are also worth money. Not every buyer buys them, but if you look around, there are buyers that will buy them. We buy beaver tails year round. I know there's a couple of other buyers in our area that do purchase them. Every buyer has different criteria that we all grade them a little bit differently. A lot of buyers actually purchase them for the actual leather of the tail. We do not do that. We buy them as a bait and lure ingredient. So our grading scale is not quite as stringent as a lot of buyers are. And beaver tails, you're looking anywhere from 50 cents a piece all the way up to $2 a piece, and that price changes from year to year, going up and down a little bit, just depending on the demand that there is for them. But those are all items that most people are throwing in the trash, stuff that would normally not have any value, that could make you some extra money. And with how poor the fur prices are these days, You know, if you're trapping, every dollar counts. So if you're going to take the time to skin a coyote and you're going to make $5 to $10 off the hide, if it's a decent hide, why not save that skull and make an extra $3 to $5? And why not save the glands and make a couple of extra dollars? Or with beavers, where the entire animal is usable, the skull is worth money, the casters are worth money, the tail is worth money, the carcass is worth money. Just all things that I feel like are pretty important to consider. Before I end this video, I want to take one more second. I know I've said it a couple times, but I want to really thank all of our subscribers. And even if you're not subscribed, if you're someone that we deal with, if you buy stuff off of us, if you buy bait and lure, if we sell fur off of you, I want to thank you for the year that you've given us. Our lure sales have been off the charts this year. We've done very, very, very well, especially on coon juice. We've sold coon juice at in amounts that we've never sold it before. So we are very, very happy and blessed that everyone is liking it so much. Then we're getting reorders. You know that a lure is doing pretty good whenever someone comes in and buys a pint and then they order 2 gallons a week later. So we are very, very happy with that. Just a reminder that if you need to reorder, or if you've never purchased any of our lure or bait and you would like to, you can buy all of that either on our website or you can buy it at murrayslures.com. Mike's a super fantastic guy. He's good to deal with, and he's ran Murray's Lures for a long time, so he's a good person to purchase off of also. A lot of trappers, you know, whenever you buy lure, you also like to get a couple of traps or supplies. We don't deal a lot in supplies unless you actually come to our shop, so Mike would be the better person to purchase off of at that point anyway. So if you see Mike, let him know that we sent you. He's a good guy. He's a good friend. And I'd like to get him as much business as possible. If anyone has any questions about the fur market or just statements that they'd like to make, don't be afraid to leave us a comment. We always love to hear about it. Anytime we get to talk about trapping, it's a good day. We all love it here. And if there's anything that you think I got wrong or missed, just let us know. Just a reminder before I finish the video, like I said, these projections are for eastern fur. These are not for northern or western fur. Obviously, your guys' stuff is bringing totally different prices than what ours is. It is the way that it is. You guys have better fur than we do for the most part. So your prices are typically going to be a lot higher than ours, or at least a little bit. Either way, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your afternoon, morning, midday, whatever time it is that you're watching this, to spend it with us. It's always great. Thanks for all the subs, all the love and support. It's been a great journey, and we hope to be doing this for you for the foreseeable future. Thanks. God bless. Have a great night. Bye.